The World Armwrestling Federation is the largest and some would say the most powerful international arm wrestling federation today. It is currently headed by its president, Asin Hajitodorov, who is also the president of the Bulgarian and European arm wrestling federations. With the state of the arm wrestling world right now, there has been a lot of controversy around the federation and significant backlash from the international arm wrestling community. But things weren't always this way. Before we try to understand what's going on today, let's first take a look through the wild history of WAF. Or should I say WAF, because that's what it was called back then. After the International Federation of Arm Wrestlers stopped hosting competitions in 1970, Robert O'Leary would go on to host his own World Arm Wrestling Championships in Scranton, Pennsylvania over the next several years. The arm wrestling scene of the early 70s was the Wild West. Tournaments used different rules and tables, some held sit-down tournaments and some preferred to use a stand-up table. Some tables had pegs while others did not. Elbow and pin pad sizes and materials were always different and some didn't even have pads at all. Arm wrestling was growing, but it became clear to Bob that more standardization was required for the future growth of arm wrestling. And that's why, in early 1976, Bob O'Leary founded the original World Arm Wrestling Federation. There was only one member country at the time, the United States. At its inception, Bob O'Leary served as the chairman of the board, while promoters Ed Jubinville and Joe Zarilla served as vice chairman. 4 other pullers also served as vice chairman: Roy Wrigley, Jim Williams, Mo Baker, and Steve Stanaway. Bob then developed a journal called The Armbender to help promote the federation, which during my research I found was still continued to be printed up till as recently as 2007. And contrary to what is normally believed, the first WAF World Championships were actually held in 1976 in Scranton, Pennsylvania. However, this event only featured pullers from the US. And it was not until 1977 when 2 more countries joined the federation, Canada and India. The 1977 World Championships, however, still only featured US arm wrestlers. But on November 10th, 1979, the first ever international WAWF World Arm Wrestling Championships was held in Wetaskiwin, Alberta, Canada, with 4 countries participating. This was a right-hand only tournament and featured 9 men's weight classes and 2 women's weight classes. Some of the names at that tournament, like Dave Patton and Al Turner, are still recognizable even to this day. Over the next 2 decades, when all is said and done, things went relatively smoothly. By the early 1990s, the WAWF was shortened to the name we know today, WAF, WAF. Arm wrestling was growing. More and more countries were joining WAF every single year, until disaster struck in 1997. Most of the world knows about the 2019 WAF IFA split, but what most newer arm wrestlers don't know is that that was not the first time that there was a split in the International Federation. The early 90s saw some very heated politics going on in the arm wrestling world. Among the heads put up on the cutting board was Mr. David Sheed from England, who got expelled from WAF based on false accusations, and the then vice president of WAF, Fred Roy of Canada, who ended up being forced out of WAF by O'Leary and Das following the 1997 Indian World Championships. Upon leaving India, Fred Roy met General Osman, the Egyptian representative, at the airport, and through their conversation, he learned that Das and O'Leary had asked Osman to host the 1998 World Championships instead of Canada, which was unanimously voted upon during the 1997 Congress. This marked the World Arm Wrestling Federation's first split into 2 different organizations: the World Arm Sport Federation, led by Osmond, O'Leary, and Das, and the World Arm Wrestling Federation, at the time led by Fred Roy. However, after 2005, both federations decided to end the split and work together as the current World Arm Wrestling Federation. Things seemed to be okay on the surface, but little did the arm wrestling world know it was only just the beginning. The 2010s was a period of great growth for arm wrestling as the world became even more rapidly globalized. We were starting to see professional events with increasingly high production levels, and during this time, Asin Hajitodorov was elected as WAF president in 2012. However, some things were going on behind the scenes that would eventually lead to yet another WAF split. Tensions were brewing in the upper echelons of WAF, and these came to a fever pitch at the 2014 World Championships in Lithuania. There were a whole slew of issues that happened at the Lithuanian World Championships. The host country wasn't given their percentage of the entry fees, awards hadn't been paid for, and questions about how money was being spent started to float around. After the World Championships, the then vice president of the European Armwrestling Federation and president of the Russian Arm Sport Association, Alexander Filimonov, sent an official letter to Asin Hajitodorov. In his letter, he asked several questions to Asin about the logistics and spending at the 2014 World Championships. After not getting a response from Asin after a month, Alexander became more aggressive and his statements became increasingly accusatory towards Asin. Who authorized him to invest his own money in WAF? At what point did WAF lose its independence and become a debtor to Asin Hajitodorov? This is completely unacceptable. In December of 2014, Asin eventually did respond to Alexander, and you can find his full response to points brought up by Alexander in the link in the description below. Thankfully, for the arm wrestling community, this incident was not enough to pull apart WAF just yet. But unfortunately, it was the fallout between Asin Hajitodorov and Igor Mazurenko which eventually broke the camel's back. Asin and Igor were actually business partners since the 2000s. In fact, in the Panama Papers offshore leak, you can see Asin's name listed as a shareholder in PAL, while Igor Mazurenko's name is nowhere to be found. In 2018, Igor and another business partner, Kirill Yakovlev, developed the URPA ranking system, which was intended to be used as a global arm wrestling ranking system. URPA would charge a $50 membership fee for an athlete to be included in the URPA ranking.
Just imagine if you have, if you had the opportunity, if somebody approached you and said, I'm the owner of the global ranking, arm wrestling ranking. Would you like to be a part of it? Would you like to have a profile that you can use, that you can show it to your sponsor? Do you want me to keep the history of your fights for you to anytime, approach your history and show it to anybody?
And according to Denise Waddles, who up till then had been a member of the WAF Congress for many years, she heard that Asin had approached Igor demanding that he should be paid a percentage of the profits, which Igor refused. Now, all of this is based on he said, she said, but whatever the reality may be, in 2019, WAF started banning PAL events and removed Poland as the World Championships host. Whether it was WAF or Asin who personally did this is not clear, but there was a huge uproar from the arm wrestling community at the time. During that year, the International Federation of Arm Wrestling was also formed by federations who did not agree with the decisions of WAF, and consequently the IFA was also banned by WAF. In late 2019 to early 2020, the COVID pandemic hit the world hard, and arm wrestling became frozen in time, until 2022 when the world began slowly opening up again. Despite all the various setbacks, arm wrestling today is bigger than it has ever been before, thanks not only to its exposure by big names like Devin Larratt, Juji Mufu, and Larry Wheels, but also due to the inception of the East vs. West organization during the pandemic by Engin Terzi. However, arm wrestlers today still live in a fractured world, divided into the IFA and WAF federations. We still see many arm wrestlers being banned from competing in various events because of decisions that they did not even have a say in. Arm wrestling is in a good place now, but it can be so much better. It took 8 years for the arm wrestling world to come back together after its previous split. Hopefully, it doesn't take as long this time.
What's up everybody? Today's video, you might have noticed, was a little bit different from the ones that I usually do, but I thought that with all that's going on in the arm wrestling world right now, this was a topic that was pretty relevant, and I just wanted to shine a little bit of light on the history of this sport that we all know and love. Huge shout out and credit to Eric Roussan for all of the research that he put in, and he allowed me to use his information from his website, the Armwrestling Archives. Go check it out, link in the description below. Thank you so much, Eric, for all the work that you have done to preserve the history of arm wrestling for the rest of us to learn and enjoy. Other than that, next week, big event again, Knuckles Up 4, such an amazing event. I look forward especially to the Svetan match just because I love Svetan. It's one of my favorite pullers. Can't wait. See you beasts next week.